Hello and welcome to Wisdom of a Lifetime. And today we're going to cover the many world interpretation and what does that mean to your life. So, in our episode on superposition, we talked about what is superposition and the Copenhagen interpretation, which is the most popular interpretation. But today we're going to talk about many world interpretation and really what does that mean to your life. So before I start, love for you to get on any of my social media platforms and subscribe and or go to my website wisdomofalifetime.com. So let's get started. So what is the many world interpretation? It's a very incredible concept in the mid 1950s. By name Everett came up with the idea, and basically it describes in the superposition state, instead of the collapse to a particle of a wave to particle, the wave is always a wave and never really collapses, and it branches off into many worlds. So let's ask AI how this interpretation works. So let's go. Hi, Gemini.
Hey there, what's going on?
So Gemini, help us understand what is the many world interpretation.
Okay, so the many worlds interpretation is a way of explaining what happens at the super tiny level of the universe, the quantum level. It gets a little weird, but here's the basic idea. Think of the universe as constantly branching off into multiple realities, like the trunk of a tree splitting into branches. Every time there's a quantum event, something happening at that super tiny level, these branches happen. So in one reality, you might choose pizza for dinner, and in another, you pick pasta. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Anytime.
So really, what's being said here is that in the many world interpretation, we don't get the collapse. We continue getting branching and branching and branching off of all possibilities. And really, what's happening here is can be looked at in a very different way. And I'll give some examples here shortly. You can think about it is that you're faced, for example, in a decision, as an example of a timeline, and you have many possibilities on that decision. It's another way of looking at it. One branch can lead you one way, another branch can lead you another way. But if you're not aware about your decision, you're going to get something that will be not necessarily to your best benefits or what you intended. So it's real important to get what do you really want out of your life and get your goals. And we talked about that in the superposition episode. Be very clear about your goal, and we'll talk more about intentions, but then also to have the right attitude about your goals and that intention. Now, what happens to most people, and this is very common, is that we go through life unconscious, not understanding what we want out of our life. And this causes us to not really get the full potential of our life. And what we want to do is get very clear on some goals about what we want in our life, and then have the right attitude towards that goal. Now, if you don't get clear about your goals, what happens is you fall into Newton's first law of motion. And what is that? We'll talk about that right now. Let's ask AI. Hey, Gemini, what is Newton's first law of motion? Can you provide details of that?
Newton's first law is all about how things like to keep doing what they're already doing. It's sometimes called the law of inertia. Basically, if something's sitting still, it wants to stay sitting still. And if something's moving, it wants to keep moving in a straight line at the same speed, unless something pushes or pulls on it to change that.
Great, thank you.
Anytime.
So there you go. So unless something, anything in motion continues in motion unless it's acted upon, and that acted upon is your awareness. So this is a very important aspect because Joe Dispenza talked about this very, very much in his book, and in some episodes about that the idea that if you live from your past in your unconscious, you'll keep getting the future the way the past was. So what he's saying is, if you have emotion that's going a certain way from your past, if you don't act upon it, it will continue in that motion, and that will be your future. And it's really well explained, and he describes how the body works in a subconscious way and unconscious, and it's not really thinking through about what it really wants in life until the goal is to get conscious. So really, at the end of the day, it's really important that you have a goal Now you have awareness of what your goal is, and now you're going to think about your goal and have the right attitude. So what you say, what you think, what you do has an important aspect to reach that goal or that intention. And we'll talk in future episodes, as I said, how to get to an intention and so on. But for now, just pick a simple goal and understand that my attitude or our attitude plays a significant role when it comes to the outcome. Now, how does it relate to manual interpretation? So in your goal, there could be many branches now based upon what you choose in your attitude and your awareness. Let me give you one example that happened to my life very early on in my career, and it cost me dearly because I was not aware. I'll give you another example where I was aware, and basically that is really important because that awareness created a great branch that I really prospered off. So, first example, when I was not aware, was I had an opportunity come to me in my early career to be the number three in Cisco, Canada. And basically, it was I was living in Toronto, Canada, and I was living in Kitchener, which was a good hour plus from downtown, which for other big cities very normal. For me, was really far, and there was no work from home or anything. Everybody had to work every day, going to the office, and I worked only 45 minutes in Tobacco, which is just the outskirts of Toronto. And at that point, I went for the interview. I got the job, and they said it's yours if you want it. You're going to be number three in Canada. It just got IPO Cisco, and basically, I thought about it. I thought this is really far. Like, and they were moving from Etobicoke to downtown Toronto, so it would have been further, and it involved trips and flying all over Canada all the time. And I thought to myself, wow, that's a lot of work, and it's really far, and I don't really want to go. Now that was I didn't think through anything. I just reacted from my past, which is I don't really want to work. I don't want to really travel too much or to go that distance from my Kitchener to Toronto. Didn't think through the equation and what it meant. Could I move? Could I sell my house? Could I move closer into Toronto and even get an apartment for the week? One room and so on. I didn't think through it because all I just thought about was being subconscious and saying no. And that cost me, I'd have to say, tens of millions of dollars in the early days of my career. I've lost. Now, a second example where I was aware was later on. I was getting very tired of being in Toronto. It was very congested and getting more congested. Bought a beautiful house, great house with a pool, loved it. My family lived there, my career, my friends was all there. But I just knew that I just didn't want to be doing this forever, being in Toronto, and I knew I had to do something different. And I remember listening in and reading a paper once saying, you got to go where the jobs are. And I also knew I wanted to go somewhere that was warmer. It was always cold, and I hated winter in Toronto. So I had this goal to get out. I didn't know where. I just knew I wanted to get out of Toronto to something better. And it happened that I got this job offer to move to the West Coast of the United States. And basically, and I thought, that's really far. I don't even know anybody there, but let me be open to it because this opportunity came from me. It was really just opportunity knocking on my door. I didn't want to close it down like I learned my lesson from the other opportunity at Cisco. So I took that opportunity and I flew out there, checked it out. I knew in my mind I was not going to take the job. I had an attitude of, I'm not going to take the job. I'm not going to take the job, but I went anyways. I went out there for the weekend. They flew me up, and I looked around. I saw it, and I thought, "Wow, this is very different." But it is a very small city. It's very quaint and cute. So I went back. I had to come up with a decision. So weeks later, they contacted me and said, "Look, we need to have a decision. Are you going to come or not? You hired. We want you. Here's a contract." And I thought, "Wow, it's a major decision. I'm going to leave all my friends, my family, but I want to get out of here." So I had an awareness now. I had a goal. Now I was paying attention because I had to come to a decision point here. So this is an example of a branch going in either two directions. Just like in the past, I gave that example of Cisco. There's a branch now, one that's going to me stay in Toronto, and that's the manual interpretation. And there's a branch that is going to allow me to move to the United States, the West Coast. And I originally said, I'm not going to move. And as soon as I made that decision, I did not tell him right away. I held on to that for a good few days because I knew that's how I wanted to let it settle in and not make a harsh decision. But in my mind, I made that decision. And I thought, okay, just going to stay here on my friend's family here. Why should I move? And then, ironically, I remember signs coming to me. I remember one sign was in the middle of the night, I had a very young child, and there was, it never happened to me. Someone came in the middle of the night into our driveway trying to bust into our car. So that is very strange. That never happened. So that was a big sign. Second sign was I had, at that time, problems with dairy, and I didn't know at that time it was dairy, but whenever I had dairy, I'd have stomach problems. So in this case, I guess I had dairy and the stomach problems, and I went to the hospital in the middle of the night, and the nurse was very rude, and it was terrible, and I was in lots of pain, and she didn't really want to do anything. She said, this hospital is only for really sick people. I got me really pissed off. Went out in the morning, went to the doctor, and he took care of me and helped me get through the inflammation. And later found out it was just I was lactose intolerant. But anyways, so I had now two paths. One was staying in Toronto, and one was moving to the West Coast. I was aware of my goal. I was aware about what I wanted, and I want to change my attitude to say, this is my goal. And if I'm going to go and pick something and move out of the city, I'm going to have to do something. And this is telling me, these signs are telling me that I should go. And out of nowhere, I picked up my whole family, moved to the West Coast of the United States, didn't know anybody, sold my house, left my friends and family. Everybody thought I was crazy, but it turned out to be an incredible opportunity that yielded incredible, amazing life together with my family and new friends and everything, and really successful in startups I did. So, and my career prospered really incredible. So there's an example of being aware of a decision and not being aware. I give you another example. So I hope this helps because I think, in life, we have to be conscious about what is it we want, have the right attitude. And then I think the last lesson here is trust your intuition. The universe is always going to give you signs about what's right and wrong. The question is, are you awake and paying attention? In my case, I was paying attention. In the second example, in the first example, I was not. And so who knows what that first example would have been if I had chosen a job at Cisco, but it didn't. But obviously, in the second example, I know what that felt like, and it felt very, very great. I was in the right timeline, on the right wave of the parallel universes described in the many world interpretation, but I was in definitely different reality. So with that, I want to thank you for this episode. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Otherwise, I will see you till next time.